The kingdom of Loria, located in the Middle Ages, was a strong state known for its long-standing existence, powerful army, and strict rule. It had high stone walls, and its towers were quite magnificent. The small kingdoms and armies surrounding it accepted their power. Some swore allegiance for friendship and peace, while others chose to remain completely silent out of fear. Victories won on the battlefield, and wars fought still left their mark on the banners hung on the palace walls and on the symbols of representation. Loria was not just a kingdom, it was also a symbol of power. At the head of this kingdom sat King Alaric, a disciplined, authoritarian, and proud ruler. He had fought in many wars in his youth and expanded the borders with his own sword. His gaze was stern. He could convey his authority and power without even speaking. His people respected him, and his enemies feared him. For him, the kingdom was not just about gaining land and power. The continuation of his lineage and the passing of his name to future generations were as important as victories and wars. He believed that a ruler's true power was measured not only by the wars he won, but also by the legacy he left behind and his descendants. His wife, Queen Elenia, was the softer face of the court. She was an elegant, calm, and compassionate woman. The court loved her. They had 2 daughters, Lena and Mira. Lena was more serious and thoughtful, while Mira was cheerful and lively. The palace was illuminated by their laughter from time to time, and the scent of warmth and sincerity spread between the stone walls. Elenia and Alaric were very fond of their daughters. Their presence was enough for them. But deep inside the king, no matter how hard he tried to hide it, there was a sense of incompleteness at not having a son. In those days, a son was not just a child, but the guarantee of the throne and the greatest opportunity for the continuation of the bloodline. The power of the dynasty and the kingdom was measured by the continuation of the bloodline. Alaric did not express this openly, but the expectation and desire in his eyes was palpable. Sometimes, even while loving his daughters, a distant thought would appear in his gaze. Elenia noticed this lack, but did not mention it. Years later, hope was reborn when news spread through the palace that Elenia was pregnant again. This time, the expectation was greater. Whispers circulated in the palace, rumors were spread, and prayers were said. The servants began preparations. King Alaric wanted to believe that this birth would change their fate. He thought the emptiness inside him would finally end. Lena and Mira did not want to leave their mother's side. For them, it might have meant just a new sibling, but for the palace, it meant much more. When the night of the birth arrived, the sky was overcast. The wind slammed against the palace towers, creating a roar between the stone walls. The stormy weather had made the night even heavier and darker. Queen Elenia's screams echoed through the corridors as the court physician Draven was by her side to oversee the birth. Draven had been in the palace for years. He was known as a reliable, calm, and cool-headed man. The king trusted him. He was someone who never panicked, even in the most difficult moments. But Draven's heart belonged elsewhere. He was secretly serving the kingdom of Varian, the enemy of Loria. No one had noticed this yet. He had been placed in the palace years ago. He had waited patiently. He was waiting for a great opportunity. That night, he guessed that fate would give him the opportunity he was looking for. Around midnight, the baby was born. A strong cry filled the room with both joy and sorrow, because Loria's screams were upsetting the people a little. The baby was healthy. She was alive. Queen Elenia closed her eyes, tired but peaceful. She felt an indescribable sense of relief inside. After long labor pains, the miracle she had been waiting for had come. It was alive. Queen Elenia closed her eyes, tired but peaceful. She felt an indescribable sense of relief. After long labor pains, the miracle she had been waiting for had finally happened. King Alaric and the kingdom had been blessed with a son. It was a blessing. When Drovan took the baby in his arms, he paused for a moment. The small body was warm and alive, a feeling he had never experienced with his daughters. When this child grew up, he would make Loria even stronger. This was a great threat to Varian. His hesitation and this thought were short-lived. He remembered his mission again. He had actually been waiting for this for years. A few minutes later, Draven left the room with a heavy expression on his face. He stated that the birth had been difficult and that the baby was not breathing. The palace was suddenly plunged into silence. At that moment, time seemed to stand still. The hope on King Alaric's face gave way to a blank stare. His eyes lost their hardness and sharp gaze. Elenia's heart seemed to stop beating several times in that moment. She couldn't accept the news, the sound of the crying she had heard just a few minutes earlier still ringing in her ears. When Lena and Mira saw their mother crying, they were overcome with fear and anxiety, feeling helpless. That night, mourning began in the palace, but behind the mourning lay another truth. Draven secretly hid the baby. He decided to make it seem not as if it had died, but as if it had never existed. As the night progressed, he handed it over to horsemen waiting in the dark at the palace's back gate. The small body was wrapped in thick cloth. Sedative herbs had been used to keep it from crying. The sound of the storm drowned out the horse's hooves. Thus, Loria's only male heir was torn from his homeland. The baby was taken to the kingdom of Varian. By the time the baby reached the kingdom of Varian, time had passed on the road. He was only a few days old. Amidst cold stone walls, in a dimly lit room of a foreign palace, his new destiny began to unfold. When King Zeran first saw the baby, he remained silent for a long time, unsure of what to do. He watched the small body breathe calmly. He was aware of the blood and lineage this child carried. Killing him would have been easy, but killing him was a short-term and easy solution. Keeping him alive, however, would be both in their own interests and a weapon, a chance left for the future. That's why they let him live. The baby was named Kieran. After that, the years passed with heavy, calm, but equally determined steps. When Kieran turned 7, he began to be educated in the palace courtyard with the other children and to spend time and play with them. When he was given a wooden sword for the first time, it was noticed that his palms were small, but his grip was firm and brave. His instructor sensed that he was more balanced and determined than expected. He didn't fall, he didn't retreat, he didn't cry when he took his first blow. There was a resistance within him that he couldn't explain or understand. The palace people watching him from the high balconies of the palace began to realize that this child was no ordinary child. When he turned 10, he was introduced to a real sword. When he felt the weight of the steel for the first time, a strange, familiar feeling arose within him. It was as if this weight was not foreign to him. He learned faster than the other children in the training area. His movements were sharp, sudden, but controlled as he swung the sword. He fought not with anger, but with instinct. One day during training, the instructor mentioned the kingdom of Loria. He explained that it was Varion's greatest enemy, ruled by a cruel king. He told stories about the ruthlessness of Loria's soldiers. Kieran listened carefully. A slight unease formed within him. He couldn't understand why. Everything that was said made sense. But when the name Loria reached her ears, she felt a brief flutter in her heart. At that moment, she didn't know why. By the time he was 13, he could move more freely within the palace. One day, while passing through the lower corridors, he noticed some commotion near the kitchen. A pot had fallen and broken, water spilling onto the stone floor. The young girl who had dropped the pot was frantically trying to gather the pieces. It was on that day that he first noticed Celine, the servant's daughter. There was fear in Selene's eyes, but also a sense of resistance. While most of the servants bowed their heads and backed away, she was trying to pull herself together. Kieran watched her from a distance for a while. There was something in her eyes that he wasn't used to seeing in the palace. There was no calculation, no show of power, no working for gain. There was only simple humanity. That encounter was brief, but it left a deep impression on his mind. As time passed, their paths crossed more often, sometimes in the corridors, sometimes in the courtyard, sometimes in front of the kitchen. They spoke little, but the looks and feelings were long. Kieran realized he felt different when he was with Selena. He could stand beside her not like a prince, but simply as a human being, and this began to make him feel very peaceful. Next to her, he could stand not like a prince, but simply as a human being, and this began to make him feel very peaceful. By the time he had turned 16, the bond between them had become undeniable. The palace rules did not approve of this closeness, and indeed plans for Kieran's future marriage to someone from a noble family had already begun to be discussed. Celine was aware of this. There were moments when she tried to keep her distance, but staying apart was becoming more difficult for both of them. Kieran felt at peace when he was with Celine. No matter how powerful he was in the field of education, no matter how much respect he commanded in the palace, the feeling of emptiness inside him only eased when he was with her. But fate did not advance silently under these circumstances. One winter night, the palace was enveloped in a heavy cold, as if something bad was predestined to happen. Celine fell into bed with a high fever. For days, her consciousness and mind came and went. Kieran secretly went to see her. He sat at her bedside for a long time. For the first time, he felt the fear of losing someone so deeply. In her feverish moments, with Kieran by her side, Selene murmured a secret she had heard as a child. She spoke of a baby brought to the palace from outside years ago. She said that baby did not actually belong to these lands, that it had been brought to the palace secretly. Kieran froze at that moment. The words were spoken in a scattered, sleepy, unconscious way, but they touched a place inside him. The unfathomable, inexplicable void he had carried within him for years suddenly began to search for meaning. The flutter he felt when he first heard the name Loria, the distance in Xiron's gaze, the birthmark on his shoulder, everything slowly began to come together. And for the first time, the possibility that the kingdom he grew up in might not belong to him took on a real shape in his mind. Kieran was no longer the same young man after that night. The words that poured out in Selene's moment of passion echoed in his mind. His sleep grew lighter as he listened to the sound of the wind hitting the stone walls of the palace at night. He was left alone with those strange questions growing inside him. He examined a birthmark on his shoulder with such attention for the first time. It was a small crescent-shaped mark. She had lived with it since childhood, but had never attached any meaning to it. Now, however, that mark began to look like a sign. It was forbidden for her to enter the palace archives, but the word forbidden no longer felt as heavy and punitive to her as it once had. As she approached 17, her courage grew with determination and suddenly surged. One night, he waited for the guards to change shifts. He descended to the lower corridors with quiet steps. He spent hours among the dusty shelves, old writings, books, and the kingdom's records. While examining documents about Varion's past, he came across a record of a gift brought to the palace on a specific date. The source of the gift was not specified. Only a note stating, "Brought from the northern border," was added. The date was almost the same as his own birth year. His suspicion was no longer just a thought. It was beginning to turn into reality. He remembered King Zaren's distant but controlled interest in him over the years. He had never been completely embraced like a son, nor had he been excluded like a stranger. He had always been kept in balance. He had always been watched from afar, but at the same time, he had been watched like a son. He had never been fully embraced like a son, nor had he been excluded like a stranger. He had always been kept in balance, always watched from afar like a stranger, yet also like one of his own children. His training became even more rigorous. Information about border conflicts increased. The tension between Loria and Varion had risen in recent years. This pause was brief, but he couldn't deny its existence or its meaning. One day, he returned victorious from battle once more. The palace welcomed Kieran like a hero. Zaren placed his hand on his shoulder. His gaze held both pride and measured coldness. In that moment, Kieran realized he could no longer live without knowing the truth. Selene had overcome her illness but was weak and exhausted. The bond between them was still deep, but also more fragile than ever. Discussions about the noble marriage plan for Kieran at the palace accelerated. Selene tried to withdraw. Kieran, meanwhile, was already restless due to the growing search for identity and lineage within him. One night, he heard a clear confession from Selena's mother that she had seen the horseman who came to the palace years ago. She said she remembered the sound of the baby's cries that night, and she couldn't forget the strange coldness and yet deeply emotional expression on Draven's face. At that time, Draven was still alive. He was quite old, but continued to serve and stand at the head of the kingdom. Kieran no longer wanted to feel suspicion. He wanted to find proof. One day, he secretly entered Draven's room. He found a small sealed pouch in an old chest. Inside was the seal of the Loria royal family. The same crescent moon symbol standing there almost perfectly matched the birthmark on his shoulder. It was identical. The crescent moon symbol on it almost perfectly matched the birthmark on his shoulder. It was identical. The truth was now inescapable. This was proof for him. Kieran was Loria's lost prince. This information was not merely a matter of identity for him. This was actually a pivotal moment that would determine the fate of both kingdoms. If he revealed the truth, Varian could declare him a traitor and kill him. If he remained silent, he would continue to fight against his own blood, a situation that greatly troubled him. He felt like he was betraying them. The conflict within him grew rapidly. He didn't speak to anyone for days. He became harsher in the training grounds, his behavior more sharp. Zehra noticed his change. Within the palace, Kirin's loyalty and behavior began to be questioned. At that very moment, Varian embarked on preparations for a major campaign against Loria. This war would be different from the small border skirmishes. The goal was not to weaken Loria, but to bring them to their knees, to defeat them. Kirin was once again placed at the head of the army. This was the harshest test of his fate and his emotions. While preparations for war were underway, Kirin secretly made a decision. At midnight, he set out with a small unit. However, this unit was not made up of Varian soldiers, but of a few people whose loyalty he was certain of. He turned his direction towards the Loria border. His goal was not to start a war, but to learn the truth, perhaps to reveal the truth. When the walls of Loria came into view from afar, his heart raced. High stone walls, majestic towers. A scene he had never seen in his childhood, yet strangely familiar. Sneaking into the palace was not easy, but Kirin knew as much about defense strategies as he did about war tactics. One night, he made his way to the inner courtyard of the palace. When Queen Elenia first saw him, she instinctively felt a jolt. There was something familiar in his facial features. In his eyes, she saw Alaric's youth. Kirin wasted no time in revealing the truth to them. At that moment, time seemed to stand still in Loria Palace. The hope and anger that had been suppressed within Alaric for years surfaced simultaneously. Knowing his son was alive was a miracle, but it also carried the heavy truth that he had grown up among the enemy. Now there was only one question before them. Which side would Kirin choose? His blood or the land where he grew up? And this choice would determine not only the fate of one family, but of two kingdoms. The approaching storm clouds on the horizon grew heavier, and the air darkened with the shadow of war. Kirin's decision would either restore Loria to power or plunge both kingdoms into irreversible destruction. Fate was no longer advancing silently. It was rapidly approaching. The truth spoken that night in the Loria Palace was not merely the revelation of a family secret. It was a rupture that could rewrite the fate of two kingdoms. King Alaric's long-suppressed longing, anger, and pride were intertwined. Standing before the son he had believed lost years ago, both empowered and shook him. In that moment, he did not feel like a king. He was not a king. He was a man, a father to a young boy, consumed by a belated sense of fatherhood. There was no hesitation in Queen Elenia's gaze. Her instinct and maternal instinct had accepted the truth. The lines on Kirin's face, the stern but deep expression in his eyes, the crescent-shaped birthmark on his shoulder, all of it had filled the suspicious void in her heart. But there was no time for feelings. The Varian army was advancing. When Kirin took his place in the Lorian War Council for the first time as his true self, the atmosphere in the hall grew heavy. Some commanders trusted his experience, while others couldn't stomach the idea of someone raised in enemy territory managing Loria's defense. He noticed these looks, but he didn't dwell on them. He went to the map as usual, calm, measured, and clear. He explained Zairon's attack plan. He would first pressure the northern line, then send troops to infiltrate through the eastern passes. He proposed reversing Loria's traditional defense formation. He planned to place a seemingly weak line in the north and keep the main force hidden in the interior. As Alaric listened to his son's strategy, he noticed something. Kieran had not only learned to fight, he had also learned to think. When the battle began, Kieran donned the Loria armor. The conflict within him became even more apparent at that moment. He was now looking at the lands where he had once fought under the Varian banner from the opposing side. The first clash was fierce. The falling snow weighed down the ground, making it difficult for the soldiers to move. The Varian forces charged north, just as Kieran had predicted and anticipated. Loria appeared to be retreating. Varian's army advanced, believing victory was theirs. But when they entered the narrow passes, Loria's hidden forces emerged to defend them. The balance of the battle shifted instantly. This move forced Varian to retreat. When Zairon received this unexpected response, he changed his plan. He launched a harsher and more direct attack. The goal was not only to break through the border, but also to eliminate Kieran on the battlefield. Because now it was no longer just about war. It was about betrayal. The clashes lasted for days. Kieran stood alongside his soldiers on the front lines. He was not just a commander giving orders, but a leader fighting on the front lines. This increased the Loria soldiers' trust in him. But every victory left small losses every day. One evening, while walking around a battlefield, Kieran looked at the faces of the fallen Varian soldiers on the ground. He recognized some of them. They were young men he had trained with. This image widened the crack within him, if only slightly. Victory was possible, but it came at a price. In the third week of the war, Zairon made his final move. Under the cover of night, an elite unit advanced toward the Lorian palace. Kieran had anticipated this possibility, but he hadn't expected them to move so quickly. By the time the news reached him, the battle had already begun at the palace gates. The clang of steel echoed between the stone walls. When Kieran reached the palace, the inner courtyard had officially become a battlefield. And in the crowd, he saw Zairon. When their eyes met, time suddenly slowed. Zairon's eyes held anger and just as much hurt. He had raised him, trained him, and made him the strongest commander of the future. But he had underestimated the bond of blood and the possibility that it would make him so emotional and turn him against his own identity. The clashes were fierce and long. Both knew each other's moves. They had undergone the same training for years. Finally, Zairon knelt. He was badly wounded, but his gaze was still fierce. At that moment, Kieran experienced an unexpected feeling. It was not hatred, nor was it pity. It was more like the weight of a closing era and betrayal. As Zairon fell to the ground, Varian's soldiers began to retreat. The battle was over, but the scars it left behind were not. Victory belonged to Loria. Yet when Kieran stood alone on the palace balcony that night, he felt not a shred of peace. He had won. He had found his identity. He was heir to the throne. But the void within him had not completely closed, because the moment he learned the truth, he realized something. His abduction might not have been just a move by Varian. Draven's years in the palace, the flawless execution of the plan, no one in Loria suspecting anything. An operation this large was too deep, to be explained by the patience of a single kingdom. As order was restored in the palace after the war, Kieran quietly began his investigation. He examined Draven's old records, the names of several palace officials who had been dismissed around the same time Draven arrived in Loria, caught his attention. One of these officials had left the palace years ago on the grounds of illness. But the signature in the archives bore the same handwriting as Draven's. This was no coincidence. Kieran now felt the cause of his unease more clearly. Perhaps it wasn't just a baby that had been stolen. Perhaps a crack had been placed in Loria's internal structure that night, and that crack had not yet closed. At the official ceremony in the throne room, Alaric declared Kieran the heir. The crowd cheered, but some faces in the crowd were cold. Kieran couldn't help but notice. The kingdom was free from external threats, but the emotional balance within was fragile. Although Lena's marriage with her young daughters provided political power in the south, some nobles saw the return of the male heir as a threat to their own influence. Mira was trying to maintain diplomatic balance, but invisible cracks were beginning to form in the palace. And just then, news from the northern border revealed a new shadow. Varian had retreated, but small, unidentified units were spotted along the border. These units carried neither Varian banners nor insignia, nor did they behave like ordinary bandits. They were disciplined, they were silent, but they were determined. As Kieran read the reports, a strange feeling arose within him. This was not an aftershock of the war. This was something else. Perhaps Zarin was only the visible surface. Perhaps there was a larger game behind the baby who had been kidnapped years ago. And if that was true, Kieran's real test had yet to begin. The footsteps echoing through the stone corridor to the palace were now more cautious. Loria was strong. The throne was secure. Peace had been declared. But shadows and instincts had begun to move without hesitation. And this time, Kieran had to protect not only a kingdom, but also the dark fragments of his own past. Kieran could no longer see anything in the palace the same way after that night. The high ceilings of the throne room, the long corridors, the banners and symbols hanging on the stone walls, everything was the same, but their meanings had changed. He was no longer just a king or an heir. He was at the center of a story whose past was hidden in darkness. But what occupied his mind most was not just the crescent symbol or the shadows in the north. It was Selene. After the war, the palace had become more formal, more distant. As Kieran's responsibilities grew, so did the invisible and impossible distance between him and Selene. Everyone now knew he was the future king, and they were quietly discussing who would stand by his side. Selena sensed this. Every time Kieran saw her, he felt a tension he hadn't felt on the battlefield. Because this time, what he feared losing was not a kingdom, but a person. One evening, they met in the palace's inner courtyard. The harshness of winter had not yet fully arrived, but the air was cold. Selena's face wore a tired but strong expression. When Kieran looked into her eyes, he didn't feel like a prince or a king. He remembered the gaze of that young girl he had seen years ago in the kitchen corridor, standing over the broken vase. Simple, uncalculated, real. But this time, there was more than just emotion between them. There was danger, too. Kieran spoke of the symbol he found in the north, Draven's letters, and Armand's escape. Selene listened carefully. She noticed the shadow and worry on his face. Celine mentioned that she remembered some whispers she had heard from her mother as a child. She said that years ago among the palace servants there was talk of a secret structure called the Brotherhood of the Two Crescents, which was based on an old division. Most people thought it was a legend. Kieran's heart sank. So this shadow was older than he had thought. But at that moment, there was something else in Celine's eyes. There was worry, because if this organization was still active, Kieran had become not just a political threat, but a symbolic target. When Selena held Kieran's hand that night, the gesture was against court protocol, but it was instinctive and powerful. With that touch, Kieran realized another truth. Being powerful did not mean fighting alone, but the court was a place of eyes. The next day, she overheard some nobles talking about Selena. Though the words, "not a suitable wife for a king," were not explicitly spoken, they were felt, especially an elderly nobleman named Lord, who made speeches emphasizing the need to preserve the purity of the dynasty. When Kieran heard these conversations, a suppressed anger welled up inside him. But he did not rush. He did not want an open conflict without first consolidating his power and gaining confidence. Just then, news arrived from the north. A scout had been found dead in a captured cell. He had been poisoned. This indicated a leak and a trace of betrayal within. Kieran's heart froze. If someone inside the palace was serving this secret organization, Selena was also in danger, because she was Kieran's weakest point, and this was known, at least to some extent. That night, he placed double the guards outside Celine's room. The official reason was increased border threats. It was only a precaution, but the real reason was different. Selena noticed this. Kieran's harshness in protecting her both increased and deepened the distance between them. On the one hand, Celine liked it, because Celine was not a shadow who wanted to be protected, but a person who wanted to stand by his side. One evening, Celine found Kieran alone in the tower. Kieran seemed lost among the maps. He stood before the northern borders, old dynasty drawings and sketches of the crescent symbol. When Celine approached him, Kieran felt the weight inside him for the first time. If this shadow had truly existed for centuries, its purpose might not be merely to weaken the two kingdoms, but to restore an ancient order. And Kieran was a key to that order. In Selena's eyes, there was more determination than fear. She was not someone who wanted to run away, but Kieran didn't want to drag her into this game and put her in a difficult position. Just as this tension and indecision were ongoing, an unexpected development occurred at the palace. The Lord formally proposed marriage to Kieran from a noble family. This marriage meant a strong alliance against the threats from the north. This proposal was not merely a political move, it was also an indirect message to Celine, in fact. The atmosphere in the palace grew heavy once more. Kieran did not immediately reject the proposal, but he did not accept it either. He asked for time. This decision caused a silent fracture within Celine. Her feelings for Kieran were strong, but she knew she couldn't compete with the burden and power of a kingdom. That same night, a fire broke out in one of the northern towers. It was small but deliberate, intentionally set. The fire was extinguished, but a crescent moon symbol drawn in charcoal was found on the wall. This was now an open challenge. The shadow structure was not only at the border, but inside the palace. The fear within Kieran had taken concrete form for the first time. This war was no longer just about strategy. It was a matter of the heart, because the enemy knew his past, his blood, and his weak point, and if their plans were correct, the next move could come directly through Selene. The palace was silent, love was fragile, the throne was heavy, and the shadows were now very close, and the shadows had begun to seep not only into the walls but also into the hearts. After the fire in the North Tower, Kieran left nothing to chance. He constantly changed the guard rotation of the palace guards. He had the pasts of the old guards re-examined, but no matter how many precautions he took, the unease within him did not subside, because the problem was not an attack from outside, but a decay growing from within. Lord's actions began to become more apparent. He emphasized the kingdom's stance more frequently at council meetings. He gave long speeches about the dynasty's blood feud. He didn't mention names explicitly, but everyone knew who the words referred to. Selene still maintained her presence in the palace with respectful distance. But the looks had changed. Some were curious, some were dismissive, some were calculating. As Kieran saw this, his protective instincts grew stronger. But the look in Selena's eyes was different. Some were curious, some dismissive, some calculating. As Kieran saw this, his protective instincts grew stronger. But there was a different emotion in Selena's eyes. She didn't look like someone who was afraid, but like someone who had accepted an approaching storm. And one night, one of the guards outside Selena's room was found unconscious. He hadn't been poisoned, he had simply been struck hard. And at the same time, the door was open. Selene was not in the room. In that moment, all of Kieran's strategy, all his coolness, vanished. The palace gates were closed. The courtyard and corridors were searched. Half an hour later, movement was detected in the old North Garden. When Kieran arrived, he saw two masked men trying to drag Selene away. They had no coat of arms or symbol on them, but a crescent moon symbol glowed on one of their wrists. A fight ensued, brief but fierce. Kieran incapacitated one of the attackers. The other tried to escape but was caught in the courtyard. Selene was unharmed, but fear was clearly visible on her face for the first time. When Kieran took her inside the palace, there was no doubt this attack was not random, it was a message. The captured man was interrogated. At first, he didn't speak. But when a small metal emblem capsule was found on him, things changed. Inside the capsule was the same inverted crescent symbol and a single sentence written, "Without blood uniting, the shadow cannot be dispelled." This sentence echoed in Kieran's mind. Without blood uniting. Yes, unite. This word did not only mean war or betrayal. Perhaps it pointed to an older bond, a blood feud. That night, Kieran went back down to the archives. This time, he placed the oldest records of Loria and Varian side by side. A document from centuries ago mentioned two brothers, the sons of the same house. One had founded Loria, the other Varian. Two sons of the same house. One founded Loria, the other Varian. The lands, originally a single kingdom, had been divided in two as a result of an internal dispute, and a small note was added. The crescent was split in two. The crescent mark on Kieran's shoulder, the captured man's inverted crescent. This symbol was the sign of the divided dynasty. So the inverted crescent represented ununited blood. Perhaps the structure they called a shadow wanted the two dynasties to reunite or be completely destroyed. If Kieran was a bridge between the two bloodlines, both as Loria's heir and someone raised in Varian, then his very existence disrupted the plans for this structure. That's why he was a target, and so was Selene. Because Selene was a connection from outside the dynasty, an unplanned, uncalculated variable. The idea that the Lord could be connected to this structure had now gained strength, because his emphasis on the purity of the dynasty dangerously coincided with the idea of the merging of bloodlines. The next day, the council convened. Kieran was not silent this time. He openly spoke of the border attacks, the fire in the palace, and the assassination attempt on Selene. And he left the crescent moon symbol on the council table. Some faces in the hall tensed, especially the lords. A momentary blankness appeared in his gaze. This moment did not escape Kieran's eye. However, there was insufficient evidence for an open accusation. An invisible internal war had begun in the palace. Kieran was now on two fronts: the shadow organization outside and political pressure inside. Selene chose to stand stronger rather than retreat during this process. She paid more attention to the palace staff. She cared for the wounded soldiers. She listened to the complaints of the women coming from the villages. Her name began to spread among the people. This did not please some nobles, but the people's affection was like a strong shield for them. Kieran saw this. One night, sitting next to Selene, he felt the weight she carried within her for the first time. He wanted to protect her, but he also wanted to see her by his side. If he gave up Selene, political balance could be achieved. But if he didn't, the possibility of civil war could grow. This choice was not a king's test, but a man's. Just as this dilemma was unfolding, news arrived from the north. Armand had been spotted. Deep in the forest, in the ruins of an old monastery, a small group bearing the symbol of an inverted crescent had been seen. This could be the center of the shadow organization. Kieran made his decision. This time, he would not wait. He would go north with a small and loyal band. But when he looked at Selene before leaving the palace, there was only one fear in his heart. Would everything be the same when he returned? Because the shadows did not just attack, they waited patiently, and perhaps the real plan had not yet begun. As Kieran mounted his horse, the horizon began to darken. In the north, the secrets of the old dynasty, the truth of the inverted crescent, and the final curtain behind the night he was kidnapped awaited him. But a quiet stirring had also begun within the palace. That night, the Lord sent a secret letter. At the end of the letter was a single symbol, the inverted crescent, and the game was becoming clearer. When Kieran set out for the north, the storm within him had not subsided. This time, he was not going to the battlefield, but to the heart of the past. He had only his most trusted soldiers with him. They carried no banner, nor did they present the image of a magnificent army, because this mission required silence. When they reached the abandoned monastery deep in the forest, the air was heavy. The stone walls were covered in moss. The doors half collapsed. But there were signs of life inside, freshly burned fire embers, fresh footprints, and on the wall, a large inverted crescent symbol. When Kieran entered, he found Armand standing before him. He had aged, but his gaze was still sharp. Armand did not flee. He did not hide, because he was waiting. Armand, who had been a Lorien guard years ago, had joined the secret organization called the Brotherhood of Union of the divided dynasty. This organization believed that Loria and Vorion actually came from a single root, aiming to reunite the two kingdoms under a single rule. But the union was not the peace they envisioned. Their plans were darker. They aimed to weaken both houses, exhaust the people, and then establish a single army through a common heir. Kieran's abduction was the first step in this plan. Raising him as a lord meant creating a figure who carried both bloodlines but belonged fully to neither. When the time came, he would be revealed and unite both sides under his rule. But there was one thing the plan hadn't accounted for: Kieran's own will. Armand didn't hide the truth, because the plan had already fallen apart. Zeron was dead, Alaric was old, and Kieran had become a king who made his own decisions. The Lord was the Brotherhood's strongest supporter within the palace. His goal was not to eliminate Selene, but to force Kieran into a dynastic marriage to create a pure union. Selene was the only element outside the plan. That's why she had become the target. When Kieran heard the truth, anger rose within him, but it was not blind rage. They had wanted to turn him into a symbol, officially a puppet. But he was a man who had seen the suffering of both kingdoms. After a brief skirmish at the monastery, the core members of the Brotherhood were captured. Armand surrendered. Kieran took him to Loria. A grand council was convened at the palace. This time, Kieran did not hide. He openly recounted his abduction, the crescent moon, the Brotherhood's plan, and the Lord's connection. The Lord's composure cracked for the first time. When presented with the evidence, he could not deny it. The Lord and the Brotherhood's members in the palace were arrested. But Kieran did not choose the path of revenge. He decided on exile instead of execution, because he wanted to build unity through consciousness, not blood. When the assembly dispersed, the palace fell truly silent for the first time. The threat had come not from outside, but from within, and now it had been exposed. That night, Kieran went to Selene. This time, there was no political distance between them. Kieran had made a decision. The next day, he proclaimed Selene queen before the people. This decision upset some nobles, but the people's support was strong because Selene had been with the people throughout the war. She had endeared herself to them and earned their respect. In his speech, Kieran emphasized one thing: blood ties can establish a kingdom, but the greatest thing that keeps it standing is justice. The peace between Loria and Lord was made permanent. A formal union agreement was signed with the new king. The two kingdoms remained independent, but a trade and defense partnership was established. The crescent symbol was banned. Years later, the walls of Loria were still strong, but they were now remembered with confidence rather than fear. Kieran went down in history as a king who bore the traces of both Loria and Varian. The child of a divided household became the ruler who ended the division. Selene stood by his side at every moment, and a baby once stolen on a stormy night changed his destiny by his own will. The throne was heavy. Love was fragile. The past was dark. But choices were stronger than all of them. And a new era began in Loria.